To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas is on a big warning coming in from the Russian president. That if Europe chooses war with Russia, the country is fully prepared to respond. We are telling you all about what the Russian leader has said and the larger message that goes out. Also on the show for you tonight, telling you about what the Indian rupee sliding past 90 per US dollar actually means for you. We are decoding that for you in just a bit. What are China's new disciplinary rules looking like for the People's Liberation Army? All this and more coming up. The Russian president has delivered one of his strongest messages to Europe, warning that if the continent chooses war with Moscow, Russia is fully prepared to respond. In fact, Putin warned that escalation could reach a stage where, in his words, no one would remain on the European side for Moscow to negotiate with. Let's just play out for you what the Russian president said.
We are not planning to fight Europe. I have said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage a war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
Putin accused Ukraine's European allies of deliberately derailing the US-led diplomatic efforts that have intensified in recent weeks. He said Europe keeps rewriting the peace proposals with demands that Moscow will never entertain, effectively sabotaging the process and then shifting blame onto Russia. Now, these remarks are coming days after the European Union's top diplomat, remember, expressed concern that the US attempts to push Ukraine into a lopsided peace plan would only encourage Russia's warmongering. Estonia also signaled that it would send troops to Ukraine if a future security arrangement placed peacekeeping forces inside the country. And Putin further threatened to cut off Ukraine's maritime access, citing drone attacks on Russia's shadow fleet operating in the Black Sea.
The most radical solution is to cut Ukraine off from the sea. Then piracy will be impossible for Ukraine in principle.
Now, earlier, Putin hosted a high-profile meeting at the Kremlin with the special envoy Steve Witkoff and US President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Following the meeting, the Kremlin ate Yuri Ushakov, has said peace remains distant. He stated that the US proposal discussed in the 5-hour session was divided into 4 main areas, yet the two sides could not reach common ground on the most contentious topic, which is territorial issues. And the Kremlin later reported that Putin accepted parts of the US draft deal while rejecting others, and that Russia is ready to keep meeting with American negotiators for as long as necessary to reach a final agreement. While during his visit to Ireland, the Ukrainian president said he was afraid the United States could lose interest in the peace process and alleged that Russia's goal was to bring this about. Trump, on the other hand, referenced the negotiations during his final cabinet meeting of 2025, describing the conflict as chaotic and difficult to solve.
8 wars, this would be the 9th, and our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation, let me tell you. What a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years.
And as the battlefield as well as the diplomatic channels remain active, Putin's latest warning leaving Europe confronting the possibility of a conflict from which the Russian president says no negotiating partners may survive, according to him. Switching gears for now, the Colombian president has invited his US counterpart Donald Trump to witness the demolition of cocaine laboratories. And his statement came in response to Trump singling out Colombia for producing cocaine and selling it into the United States.
It's okay? And then they sell us their cocaine. We appreciate that very much. But yeah, anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
In fact, as we break this down, the leader quickly reacted to his warning, saying that his government has destroyed 18,400 cocaine laboratories without missiles. And he invited Trump to see how the labs are destroyed one every 40 minutes. And the Colombian leader also warned that a threat to his country's sovereignty was a declaration of war that he said will awaken a jaguar. And he advised Trump not to damage 2 centuries of diplomatic ties. While highlighting that his US counterpart has already slandered him, he added, do not continue down that path. Now, according to the US Drug Enforcement Administration, Colombia remains the main source of cocaine entering the United States. Approximately 84% of the cocaine seized in the US in 2024 was sourced from Colombia. Trump's administration, meanwhile, has deployed a huge military force to the country, in fact, to the region, under the pretext of stemming the flow of drugs to the US, and has carried out missile attacks on vessels in the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea, killing at least 83 people in the process. Trump made his remarks on expanding attacks against narcotics exporting countries while seated next to the Secretary of War, who is under scrutiny for a so-called double tap strike in September that killed 2 survivors from an earlier US attack on a vessel in the Caribbean Sea, which had already killed 9 people. Experts saying the second attack on the 2 survivors as they clung to the wreckage of the destroyed vessel was potentially a war crime, and both Democrat and Republican lawmakers have promised to investigate the circumstances of the killings. Our next story is from India, where on Wednesday, the rupee fell to a fresh record low of over 90 per dollar. As delays in concluding the crucial trade deal with America continue to dent sentiments in a way, the rupee weakened as much as 0.5% to the symbolic new low, and that pessimism also spilling over into the equity market, with the benchmark NSE Nifty 50 index declining as much as 0.5%. Remember, India is still among the few major economies yet to seal the deal with the US, even though officials are optimistic about that happening soon. But the 50% tariffs imposed on Indian goods by the Trump administration, partly as punitive measures for continued purchase of Russian oil, have weighed on the exporters, while strong imports have kept the dollar demand high, adding pressure on the rupee. So basically, a combination of these factors created a supply-demand imbalance in the foreign exchange market, leading to the depreciation pressures on the Indian currency. And as per analysts, the Reserve Bank of India has defended the rupee through aggressive dollar sales to support key levels, but also appears of late to be allowing greater currency flexibility. And with inflation running well below expectations, the RBI's priority basically has been focused on supporting growth rather than expending the reserves to hold an artificial line. So that means that India's central bank was intervening only to ease the volatility, not to reverse a trend driven by the fundamentals. To be clear, analysts expect the rupee to settle in a 88 to 92 range. Indeed, this year's weakness of the rupee has been driven by higher US tariffs on Indian exports and the exodus of foreign investors from the local stock market as a result. But possible improvements in US-India trade ties and a lower tariff rate could also ease pressure on the currency. But if that doesn't eventuate, the RBI may be forced to support the rupee further. What exactly is the real-world impact of all of this? Yes, a weaker rupee makes Indian goods and services cheaper abroad, boosting export competitiveness. This also helps to offset the tariff pressures facing exporters as India seeks to expand its markets by signing trade deals with countries like the UK. And there is a silver lining. India is the world's largest recipient of remittances, remember, with a record $137 billion flowing into the country in 2024, according to the World Bank. A softer currency basically means every dollar remitted buys more rupees, lifting the household incomes and the consumption. In 2024, India received $137 to $138 billion in remittances. That's more than double any other country. In fact, for rural and low-income families, this extra money is the real uplift, sometimes funding education, healthcare, or property investments. On the flip side, a weaker rupee makes imports more expensive, pushing up the cost of essential items like oil, fertilizers, electronics, most of which India buys from overseas. And the rupee's fall past 90 is more than a number as such. It's a marker of a new phase in India's economic story. It also shows that in letting the rupee float, India's policy makers are betting on long-term gains over short-term defense. China's military leadership is entering one of its most aggressive phases of political control yet, it seems. Beijing has reportedly announced sweeping new disciplinary rules for the People's Liberation Army, tightening the loyalty requirements that appear to be making unquestioned obedience to President Xi Jinping the defining condition for service. Let's just break this down for you. The updated regulations, which reportedly take effect on the 1st of January next year, undermine the Communist Party's demand for absolute ideological conformity. The military now faces punishment for what the party calls incorrect political views, improper comments, and any refusal to follow the orders from the Central Military Commission. The Central Military Commission, chaired directly by Xi Jinping, is China's highest military power structure. The new framework further reinforces Xi Jinping's position as the key decision maker on every major military matter. The chairman responsibility system basically puts him at the top of command, and the revised rules seek to eliminate any challenge to that authority. The PLA Daily, the official military newspaper, states that the rules will prioritize strict political discipline above everything else. Although full details remain undisclosed, the revisions appear to broaden the definition of political misconduct. Any deviation from the party messaging will soon qualify as a disciplinary violation. These regulations arriving amid an intense purge inside the Chinese armed forces. Just this October, 9 top generals have been removed from both the party and the military for alleged disloyalty and severe disciplinary breaches. While over the past year, the anti-corruption drive has extended deep into the defense sector, affecting aerospace companies, weapons research institutes, major military contractors. According to a report, corruption investigations in China have disrupted procurement deals and also stalled the key weapons programs, creating uncertainty around Beijing's long-term modernization plans. The report by the Swedish think tank SIPRI also states, remember, that China's military-industrial sector struggled last year, even as global arms manufacturers, on the contrary, posted record sales. Xi Jinping has repeatedly labelled corruption the biggest danger to the Communist Party and has directed the military, in fact, to treat loyalty to the party as equal in importance to combat capability. Experts saying the new rules incorporate lessons learned from recent investigations and reflect Beijing's determination to prevent dissent within the ranks. China's push to centralize military control continues. And with these new regulations, the message from Beijing appears to be clear: unquestionable political obedience to Xi Jinping now defines the very foundation of military service. And before we go on any further, a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. What exactly is America's $1 billion program for kamikaze drones all about? What led to it? We tell you what's happening. The search for missing MH370 aircraft set to resume. We are telling you all that you need to know. Also getting you a detailed report on the final supermoon of 2025. All this and more coming up. Let's now shift focus to the United States. The Pentagon has launched a $1 billion program for kamikaze drones. The program, slated for the next 2 years, involves buying hundreds of thousands of one-way attack drones. That's kamikaze drones, dubbed the Drone Dominance Program, DDP. It is basically an implementation of Pete Hegseth's July memo, authorizing major changes to how the department procures and uses these weapons. Now, despite the lessons learned from Ukraine and many other battlegrounds as such, the US military has continued to move extremely slowly to field lower-end drones on a widespread basis as such. The latest Pentagon move will change that, albeit with relatively conservative goals as compared to the millions of drones used by Ukraine and Russia. According to its website, the Department of War expects to order 30,000 drones, with deliveries to be fulfilled by July 2026. And by 2027, Drone Dominance intends to purchase over 200,000 drones that can produce lethal effects in the toughest battlefield environments, quote unquote. Now, this plan calls for a total of more than 300,000 drones to be bought by early 2028. As per the US War Department, the drone program is designed to help the American war industry organize around the need for low-cost supply chains, secure manufacturing on an urgent basis. And the program will move through 4 phases. Basically, each phase will begin with a challenge during which selected drones are flown by military operators and tested in controlled missions. The vendors that perform well will be eligible for orders of 1,000 or more drones. The first competition under the new DDP program is scheduled to begin in fact, to be precise, the 16th of February 2026. Among 25 invited vendors, where will the money come from, really? The US War Department saying that the funding provided by what the Trump administration calls the big, beautiful bill is ready to be used to build that kind of combat power.
Drone dominance is a billion-dollar program funded by President Trump's big, beautiful bill. It is purpose-built on the pillars of the War Department's new acquisition philosophy, a stable demand signal to expand the U.S. drone industrial base by leveraging private capital paired with flexible contracting built for commercial companies founded by our best engineers and entrepreneurs. Drone dominance will do 2 things: drive costs down and capabilities up. We will deliver tens of thousands of small drones to our force in 2026 and hundreds of thousands of them by 2027.
The program is arriving at a time when disposable attack drones are reshaping conflicts around the world. We've been telling you about this. Since 2022, both sides in the war in Ukraine have deployed vast numbers of small drones for strikes, reconnaissance, battlefield disruption. In West Asia as well, we have seen armed groups using small unmanned systems to threaten shipping routes in the Red Sea. And despite this, the US military continues to encounter obstacles as it seeks to deploy affordable drones at scale. Much of the uncertainty focuses on whether the commercial sector can surge production fast enough to meet the Pentagon targets. With this new drone program, the Pentagon hopes that fast pay-on-delivery contracts with a competitive and merit-based process will give innovators the opportunities to scale production and also meet American military's demands. In a dramatic turn in the US-Germany relations, the Pentagon has reportedly cut off communication with Germany. And this comes as Washington has moved to reduce its direct involvement in the Ukraine war and in Europe as such, urging NATO members to play a bigger role in their defense. The German army chief saying that communications between the Pentagon and the German Defense Ministry have been sharply reduced. The top military officer saying he now relies on German diplomats in Washington to find somebody in the Pentagon for basic information about US policy. According to Germany's army chief, the cracks in the US-Germany relations are not new. In fact, saying that the Trump administration offered no warning to Berlin about its move to suspend certain weapons shipments to Ukraine early this year. Let's just break this down further. The United States has traditionally treated Germany as one of its most important European allies. Germany hosts the highest number of active duty US military personnel in Europe. And there are about 35,000 soldiers stationed at German bases, which also serve as staging posts for American operations across Africa and West Asia. Earlier in the year, the US had planned to deploy Tomahawk long-range missiles in Germany by next year. The US has vowed development of hypersonic weapons that have a longer range than the current capabilities in Europe. After Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Germany agreed to work towards spending 2% of its economic output on defense within a decade. But its progress was slow in the years that followed, and Donald Trump complained in his first term, remember, that Germany and other NATO members were not paying their share. With the US winding down activity in Europe in a way, Germany has recognized that it needs to rearm. It is apparently looking beyond the US for air defense weaponry. Reversing its history, Germany is purchasing advanced weapon systems from Israel. it has signed a $4.3 billion defense deal to acquire the Israeli-made Arrow 3 air defense missile system. The Arrow 3 system is designed to take out ballistic missiles while they are still outside of the atmosphere. Not just that, Germany is permanently stationing troops beyond its borders for the first time since the Second World War. Berlin mulls turning the armed forces of Germany into the strongest conventional force in Europe by 2029. This after warnings from the defense minister and other officials who claim that Russia could attack the NATO in the coming years. But Moscow has vehemently rejected those claims as unfounded. It says Western governments are deliberately using the threat of Russian aggression to stoke fears and justify rapid militarization across the European Union. The Russian president is set to visit India on Thursday for the first time since the Ukraine war started. A rare trip that underscores the country's defense and energy ties as New Delhi seeks to finalize a trade deal with Washington. Take a look at our next report as Putin's visit in a way tests New Delhi's US-Russia balancing act.
The stage is set. It's a high-stakes moment in global diplomacy. President Vladimir Putin will be in New Delhi. He is set to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the 23rd annual India-Russia summit. This is Putin's first visit to India in nearly 4 years, since the Ukraine war began. The rare trip marks crucial diplomatic milestone amidst complex geopolitical circumstances. For New Delhi, this visit will be about signing pacts and showcasing its strategic autonomy. For Moscow, every handshake in India will signal it has friends in high places, and it is increasingly looking at Asia for trade.
President Putin's India visit will be very high on ceremony and on substantive talks. This is a state visit and will include all the elements of a state visit, including the ceremonial reception at the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan. But this two-day tightly packed visit will have a private dinner between the two leaders and also a state banquet hosted by the Indian president.
At the heart of the summit is energy, trade and defense cooperation. The visit comes as India faces pressure from US to curb trade with Russia. Russia is India's largest crude oil supplier. As of 2024, India makes up 1/3 of total Russian oil imports. Putin is eager to show that Moscow has strong relationships that matter beyond the West. He wants to build a system that is less exposed to restrictions from third countries. India-Russia defense talks will be the most closely watched. India is looking to progress several pending military acquisitions, led by additional S-400 air defense systems. Moscow is offering the crown jewel of its military, the Su-57, and even proposing a joint production with India.
This is a visit which is coming after a gap of several years. The last time Russian president was in Delhi was in 2021. Several announcements are expected in areas like trade, health, pharma and media. But the significant of all will be the mobility pact that will help Indians go to Russia as part of the engagement between the two countries.
Putin's visit is an opportunity to demonstrate Prime Minister Modi's continued ability to chart out an independent geopolitical path. A visit which will be closely watched by the Western capitals. India has been firm that this is not an era of war. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's now shift our focus to the West Bank, where the Israeli Prime Minister, in fact, is reportedly backing the authorization of illegal farming outposts, long linked to settler violence, even as international criticism against those attacks continues to intensify. A report from Israeli outlet revealing that Netanyahu supported legalizing these outposts during a high-level meeting last month. That discussion, which included Defense Minister and the IDF Central Command Chief reportedly, took place amid a sharp surge in attacks, reportedly by radical hilltop youth settlers, allegedly, on nearby Palestinian communities. The document quoted claiming that Netanyahu called these farming outposts a necessary and positive response to safeguard Area C, the portion of the West Bank under full Israeli control, reportedly. It further frames the outposts as a counter-effort to what Israel characterizes as Palestinian expansion in the region. Palestinians, however, stressing that Israel issues building permits almost exclusively to Jewish settlers, leaving Palestinian villages unable to legally expand. Human rights groups saying settlers have used these farms as tools to seize additional land while violently intimidating Palestinians, allegedly. Hundreds of Bedouin families have reportedly abandoned their homes due to repeated attacks. The developments coming at a time when the US appears to be growing frustrated with Netanyahu, even as Israel intensifies its operations in the West Bank, where the deaths of 2 Palestinians by Israeli soldiers allegedly drew international condemnation. US President Donald Trump just recently warned Israel not to endanger the stability of Syria under the president, Ahmad al-Shara, just days after an Israeli operation killed at least 13 people in Syria. Despite the mounting pressure, the outlet stating that Netanyahu is pushing ahead with efforts to formally legalize the outposts. Although previous Israeli governments provided security and financial support for these sites, their construction occurred without the permits required under Israeli law. The report further noting that Israeli Finance Minister and Settlement and National Projects Minister, both known to be far-right figures, have funneled tens of millions of shekels into these farms for security systems and mobile housing, allegedly. Israeli media claiming that roughly 1,000 hilltop youth active across the territory, with around 300 labeled violent and a core group of 70 considered the most extreme, allegedly. And the document reportedly saying Netanyahu wants to counter settler violence primarily through education, stating that Israel should focus on removing Jewish youth from the cycle of violent activity in the West Bank. More than a decade after its mysterious disappearance, the search for the missing Malaysia Airlines aircraft MH370 set to resume at the end of December. On March 8, 2014, the Boeing 777 carrying 239 people vanished from radar screens while on its way from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing in one of aviation's greatest mysteries. 2/3 of the passengers were Chinese, while the others included Malaysians, Indonesians, Australians, as well as Indian American, Dutch and French nationals. Despite the largest search in aviation history, the plane has not been found, and search operations were called off in April because of the changing weather, with the Malaysian government at the time saying that the work would resume later in the day. Malaysia's transport minister, in fact, told news agency AFP that the decision to continue the search efforts now is based on the season, which is favorable for the search to resume. China has welcomed the announcement. Family of the passengers still seeking answers for what happened that fateful day, also welcoming the search effort resumption. Maritime exploration firm Ocean Infinity will be conducting that search in a targeted area assessed to have the highest probability of locating the aircraft. The search is conducted on the no find, no fee principle, with the government only paying if the firm finds the aircraft. Ocean Infinity, based in Britain and the US, led an unsuccessful hunt in the year 2018 before agreeing to launch a new search this year. An initial Australia-led search covered 120,000 square kilometers in the Indian Ocean over 3 years, but found hardly any trace of the plane other than a few pieces of debris. The Malaysian government has said the latest development underscoring its commitment in providing closure to the families affected by the tragedy. Relatives of the victims, in fact, had voiced hope in February that a new search could finally bring some answers. Remember, the plane's disappearance has long been the subject of theories ranging from the credible to outlandish as well, including that the veteran pilot allegedly had gone rogue. A final report into the tragedy released in 2018 pointed to failings by air traffic control and said the course of the plane was changed manually. Investigators said in that 495-page report that they still did not know why the plane vanished and refused to rule out that someone other than the pilots had diverted the jet. Relatives of passengers lost on the flight have continued to demand answers from the Malaysian authorities. Family members of the Chinese passengers gathered in Beijing outside the government offices and the Malaysian embassy in March on the 11th anniversary of the flight's disappearance. Attendees of the gathering shouted, "Give us back our loved ones," with some holding placards asking, when will the 11 years of waiting and torment end? With the search resuming, families are hoping that after more than a decade of uncertainty, this time there will be answers that they have been waiting for. There is a sweeping new immigration freeze in the United States. The Trump administration has paused all immigration applications, including green cards and U.S. citizenship for immigrants from 19 non-European countries. Not just this, the Trump administration is also moneying to expand the travel ban to include 30 countries. The White House says it's about national security and public safety. But the move revives and sharpens the earlier travel ban. At the center of this decision is a deadly attack on National Guard members in Washington last week. An Afghan man was arrested as the suspect. One officer was killed, another was critically injured, and the administration is using that incident to push through the broadest legal immigration restrictions since Trump returned to office. The list includes countries of the MENA region, Asia, Africa, West Asia, Latin America, 19 in total. The US says the list of more countries to be added will come out soon. The new memorandum of orders a full review of every pending case. Citizenship oaths have been cancelled, naturalization interviews put on hold, green card applications frozen, and for many, a new round of interviews to reassess the security risks. This comes as President Trump sharpens his rhetoric, calling Somalis, quote-unquote, garbage. He said, "We don't want them in our country," quote-unquote, and accused the Biden administration of opening the door to danger. Listen to this.
We got a lot of people in our country that shouldn't be here, and they came in through Biden, and he was the worst president in the history of our country. But the single biggest thing he did was allow millions of people into our country that shouldn't be here.
Since January, the Trump administration has already turned away asylum seekers at the southern border, raised deportation rates in major parts, and expanded the powers of the federal agents. But this new freeze marks a decisive shift, a direct targeting of legal immigration itself, and it leaves thousands of families in limbo, waiting again for a system that has come to a halt. From the ruins of Chernobyl, a life form has emerged that defies science in a way. A fungus that eats radiation and may shield astronauts from cosmic death. Our next story uncovering for you the unlikely survivor that could transform nuclear safety and space travel as well.
Chernobyl, the world's most infamous nuclear graveyard. A place where reactors exploded, cities emptied, and radioactive winds scarred an entire generation. In 1986, a steam explosion blew of the reactor lid, causing another explosion, which released large amount of radioactive material in the atmosphere. Chernobyl remains one of Earth's most dangerous zones. Yet inside these toxic ruins, something astonishing thrives, a mysterious black fungus that feeds on radiation like food. Scientists first spotted it creeping up the walls of the destroyed reactor, moving towards the most radioactive spots. Instead of dying, it grew stronger. Instead of fleeing radiation, it embraced it. This fungus, rich in melanin, the same pigment that protects human skin from ultraviolet rays, appears to convert deadly gamma radiation into chemical energy. In simple terms, it eats radiation and grows. Researchers now believe that it could be the ultimate nuclear shield. Lab tests show the fungus absorbs radiation at levels that would kill humans instantly. Now, researchers say that a thin layer of this fungus could reduce radiation exposure like a natural self-repairing armor. Space agencies are working on deep space missions that require efficient radiation protection. The present-day shields are heavy and costly. A living, self-repairing fungal layer could change the game. Researchers continue unraveling how this humble organism turns lethal energy into life-sustaining power, a twist of nature born from disaster. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
China firing its boldest shot in its population battle. Attacks on condoms, a shock move to force a demographic turnaround in a way. Beijing fighting population freefall with cash, carrots and policy sticks. But will it work is the question. Our next report telling you more.
The greatest threat to a superpower is rarely military. It is often demographic. China's industrial engine is slowing, starved of the one resource it can't import: young people. Now Beijing is resorting to a desperate, controversial economic move to force population growth. A policy turn no one saw coming. Beijing is imposing a 13% tax on condoms and contraceptives. After 3 decades of exemption, Beijing is putting a price tag on protection, hoping money might do what slogans and subsidies couldn't: make China have more babies. The urgency is real. China's population is falling at a record speed, shrinking by millions each year. Births in 2024 hit the lowest level since the founding of the People's Republic. Beijing has tried almost everything. Scrapped the one-child policy, introduced the 3-child norm, rolled out cash rewards, home subsidies, cheaper mortgages, extended maternity leave, and even pushed local governments to fund IVF treatments. But none of it has slowed the slide. Young Chinese remain unconvinced, weighed down by insane work hours, brutal housing prices, and fears of raising children in an ultra-competitive world. The new condom tax is Beijing's latest pressure tactics. Officials say the aim is simple: shift mindsets, make contraception less convenient, make childbirth feel economically smarter. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The size of modern cars is emerging as a major focus in Europe. Such vehicles are reportedly getting longer, wider, heavier, and also more popular than ever. And several parts are clamping down on them reportedly, citing large vehicles becoming a serious urban problem. Paris, for example, is notorious for its traffic jams. For 2 decades, the city has pushed to reduce congestion and pollution. It has rolled out low-emission zones, promoted cycling, public transport, and now it is targeting heavy cars. Since October 2024, visitors who park large vehicles on Paris streets pay sharply higher fees. Charges tripled after a public vote, rising from 6 to 18 euros for a single hour in central areas. and from 75 to 225 euros for 6 hours. Officials said the move accelerates the city's environmental transition. And months later, a steep drop was reported, with the number of very heavy cars parking on the streets falling by 2/3. Other parts are also paying attention. In Wales, Cardiff has already approved higher residential parking permits for cars weighing more than 2,400 kilograms, roughly double the size of a subcompact car. In fact, the city is reportedly planning to gradually lower that weight limit. Several councils in the UK are studying similar measures, reportedly. Cars across Europe keep growing. According to a UK-based research institute, since 2018, the average width of new cars has climbed from 182 to 187.5 centimeters, while average weight has jumped from around 1,360 to nearly 1,600 kilograms. And this trend, it claims, stretches back decades, driven partly by consumer demand and partly by new safety features that make vehicles heavier. France already charges extra registration tax on cars weighing more than 1,600 kilograms. A penalty that can rise to as much as 70,000 euros for the very heaviest models. The debate over the future of big cars in Europe is only getting more intense. A silver giant rising in the December sky, a moon bigger, brighter than anything you've seen this year. This is the final supermoon of 2025, and astrologers say its energy could shake every zodiac sign. Our next report telling you more.
The sky is set for its final act of 2025, casting a silver glow over the world, inviting everyone to pause, reflect, and embrace the energy of endings and new beginnings. This isn't just a moon, it's a celestial beauty that stirs hearts and minds across the globe.
It's a beauty that astronomy can give us, things we can enjoy in Bogota and Colombia. There are countries where you can't see these inexplicable phenomena. We are lucky, we are happy, it's very beautiful, really.
The cold moon is December's full moon, a symbol of winter's deep embrace. But this year, it's not just any full moon, it's a supermoon, appearing larger and brighter as it nears Earth. At its peak on December 4th, the moon will glow with a honeyed hue, enchanting anyone who looks up. Supermoons occur when the moon's orbit brings it closest to Earth, making it up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter than a typical full moon. This is nature's grand finale, a moment to feel the universe's pulse and let its energy wash over you. Astrologically, the cold moon is a catalyst for reflection and intense emotional cleansing, urging us to shed the baggage of the year and prepare for renewal. This particular supermoon, positioned powerfully in its designated zodiac house, focuses this energy like a cosmic laser beam. For Gemini and Sagittarius, it mandates a major overhaul of communication and travel plans, forcing clarity where there was chaos. Cold moon, supermoon demands attention. For one night, the universe delivers a message for transformation, proving that the silent power hanging above us remains the strongest force in our lives. Bureau Report, WION World is one.
They purr for comfort, they hiss when angry, yet when it comes to talking, cats seem to save their meows for men, it seems. It's a rather curious pattern, backed by science. What makes this chatter louder around the male voice? Cats, of course, don't just talk, they choose their audience. New research revealing that cats meow more at men than women. It's not love, it's not fear, just sound science. A study in Switzerland placing hidden microphones in homes. The result was unmistakable. Cats became chattier around male voices. Scientists saying it's all about the pitch. Women's softer tones comfort cats, while men's deeper voices spark curiosity or tension. For a cat, a man's voice might sound like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Cats use over 100 vocal sounds to control human beings. That half purr, half cry, it mimics a baby sound, an instinct no human can ignore, and the trick works every time. Pet owners worldwide admit that cats manipulate through tone, timing, and eye contact. The sound that they make, turns out, is an art form. Cats were first domesticated around 9,000 years ago. Beyond human-specific meows, cats are full of surprising talents, it seems. They detect frequencies well above and below our hearing. The average house cat shares 95.6% of its genetic makeup with a tiger. So the next time your cat greets you with a booming meow when you walk in, especially if you are male, remember, you might just be failing the basic test of cat attention in a way. A rare piece of imperial history has just shattered records. The imperial winter egg, crafted for Tsar Nicholas II, is an Easter gift to his mother, sold for an astonishing $30 million at a Christie's auction. Carved in rock crystal and adorned with platinum snowflakes, the winter egg is considered one of the finest works of the artist. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.